Today's Wednesday, February 1st. Happy February, everybody. It's 4 p.m. Thank you all for coming. We're going to do rules and procedure, and then we're going to go to Old Harbor Task Force. I think we have some ideas around Old Harbor Task Force. Don't feel like you have to present anything or any, it just at our, as I'll say, at our last meeting where we talked about it, the great thing about your report is it catalyzed a lot of conversation, and we wanted to follow up on that. So, item number one is rules of procedure of the town council. Martha and Sven, if I recall correctly, this has been on our agenda for 2 years now, I think, at least, updating it. So today is the day, everybody. Feel the earth shifting. For background, these are the rules that govern the process of the town council, and they're important. And the document you'll see on Clerkbase is an updated draft prepared by Millie McGinnis and Marianne Crawford, and I think done extraordinarily well. Basically, it's modernized. Believe it or not, the old rules of procedure, I believe, may have been in direct conflict with the state's Open Meeting Act. Not intentionally, it just hadn't been updated and viewed in the context of the statute. Of course, we always followed the Open Meetings Act anyway, but now in this draft they're consistent. So for the public, take a look at it. We've been reading them for a while. I had a few, actually only two potential changes. One is on page 3, what would be item 13, to the most practical and reasonable extent possible, is how that paragraph begins. Then a few lines down, it says, shall be posted on the Town of New Shoreham Clerkbase homepage. All of which is great, except that I don't think we should be calling out a particular company, because at some point we may find that Clerkbase doesn't work for us, or there's some newfangled great system. So I would suggest that we write something like Clerkbase or its successor determined by the council. So something like that. Okay. The other point that I had is, yeah, please.
So I know there was some discussion on the website, that things would be available on the website again, trying to increase.
Yes.
Oh, trying to increase. Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Trying to increase awareness. Is that something that we just assume will happen, and this is the minimum, or do we want to say it in here?
That's a good question.
I mean, I'm happy to say it's a goal.
Yeah, I mean,
put it in.
It's a real. I'd be interested in what Molly has to say about this, because she and I spent a lot of time on.
Basically, it's talked about having as much information accessible to people, and that the website will handle agendas for meetings. Our website, the new town website. The question is, do we call it out in here, or is that a nice to have versus a mandate? Because in theory, these are requirements. So in other words, in addition to Clerkbase, it would be on our website as well.
So, and in the charter, it says that all these things are going to be broadcast in the most current technology available at the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Something like, yeah, I mean.
Something, I don't know the exact language, but so.
I'm
Yeah,
very happy to
I wish
just
Millie
leave it
was
as
here,
is.
because then she would be the one to ask, because it's really hard.
I'm comfortable with or its successor.
Yeah. I'm fine.
That gives the flexibility that we need, I think.
Yeah.
So you'd also want to
I mean,
change
I
that
would
in
love
14.
a day where you don't have to click through the Clerkbase for things, that it's all present on the website.
Me too.
Um,
Much like Platt and Lot now. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But should it even reference, since you have to get to clerk base, you have to go to the town website. Why are we even referencing?
Oh, I don't-
clerk base?
That's a good question. That's interesting. I don't go to the town website.
Oh, that's how I think.
Oh,
Oh, really? I always go.
You can
just
go
to
directly to it,
Clerkbase.
but you can,
Yeah.
either way.
Either way.
Um,
I'd leave it like it is.
Okay.
It's just a question
It's,
for
it's
down
a
the
good
road.
question.
I
Uh,
do have a question.
Yeah, please.
Facilities, Public Facilities Review Commission, what is that?
Where?
Page 1.
Public Facilities Review Commission.
Isn't it?
We still have them?
It's yours.
It definitely wasn't in the charter. Good question.
Which number are you looking at?
Same one, 13, about 3 lines down where it's listing the public document availability. There's Facilities Review Commission, Public Facilities Review Commission.
I think that was the commission that generated the idea that we should have a we should have a facilities director.
No,
Isn't
no,
that,
no,
That was-
that's not
No.
true. That came out of planning stuff.
That came out of large capital assets.
Yes. which is
Okay.
Part of planning. I don't know what this is.
I've never heard of it.
We probably appointed.
No.
We
we didn't.
probably did in that meeting. It was right after the stone fence minder.
I'd scratch that.
Let's wait until, let's just hold on that one until Mary Ann has her stuff open and we can talk about it.
Okay.
I just want to, only other thing that I had is in new section 24A in B. This is regarding vacancies. It eliminates the requirement that we announce in the Block Island Times. And given how frequently we struggle with appointments, I'd rather not.
Yeah.
I'd rather not take that out.
You'd rather not take out in the Block Island Times?
Yeah, I mean, why not, but maybe Mary Ann knows why they did that. It just, to me, the more, if we eliminate the Block Island Times, the only way somebody would know there's a vacancy would be to pay attention to our agendas.
I like the 15 days rather than a month because it just,
Between calendar days, between business days.
I would do.
So if we-
Because
I
I,
think we should specify, particularly given the open meetings. it should be-
Yeah,
I agree,
calendar,
but
Keith, I would say,
Yeah.
leaving it the way it is
yes,
with in the Block Island Times
yeah,
struck out. They could still advertise in the Block Island Times. It just wouldn't be required.
right.
So I think that's probably not a bad idea because
So,
Well,
maybe later they decide they're going to do it over social media or they're going to put a banner outside or, they can do.
or put it on the website.
I think if we hold it to the Block Island Times, then we're held to the Block Island Times. But this way it's optional.
This is contrary to recent history. Rather easy document to amend. It's not a zoning ordinance,
Yes,
and it doesn't have to take 3 years.
right. I'm fine with that. I guess maybe the message is, leave it struck out or,
I leave it. Yeah.
so.
So leaving
so-
it in, it's an expense,
Yep,
right? Because you're average, I'm just saying it's
yep,
not that we can't spend the money that way. I'm just saying, just keep that in mind. But, and then you're held to it. Like you have to do that.
That's at least one act.
Sure.
Force required. Yeah. I agree. But I like the 15 calendar. That also gets us to probably 2 runs of paper.
yeah. So we will eliminate the strikeouts in A and B in the Block Island Times. And insert calendar before days in A and B as well.
Mhm.
Does that fit?
Do you want to make that as a motion? Or do we
I
need
think
to?
we'll just do
all at once?
them all together at once. Mary Ann, do you have this in front of you, the draft? Do you, in 13, on page 3, what would be new 13, I think? There's a listing of the town boards and commissions, one of which is the Public Facilities Review Commission. So it was Molly's fault? Just to be clear. It just- I think it might have been Kim
It's the
Gaffney.
chair of the Charter Commission.
Well, it has to be right, given who the chair was.
Couldn't see the beard.
If it doesn't mean anything, we can just leave it, I guess, but I don't know. I'm perfectly happy striking it, but if it's in the charter, okay. Margie? Oh. Oh, cool. It's an optional. Right. That's very helpful.
That right,
Section 908 of the charter says there may be a public facility review committee appointed by the town council to review building proposals of the town of New Shore. The Public Facilities Review Committee shall be responsible for the review of design, purpose, needs, and location of all proposed facilities, all proposed public facilities of the town.
and that's committee, not commission.
This here says committee, which is interesting.
And it reports to the council.
It doesn't say, it says appointed by the town council, which would lead me to believe.
Reports to the council.
So I would think the language you're seeing in the, if I look up through the.
Yeah.
charter, it's probably going to.
So we
be-
should probably change commission to committee,
Committee.
right?
In the rule.
Yeah, in the rules of
Yeah, no,
procedure.
no.
Yeah.
I got a question that it's probably not on, exactly on topic, but do they ever, I don't think they do, have instances where it's not an impact statement, there's another term for it, is required that a study be done by the applicant who's putting together a proposal. We used to do that a long, long time ago, and I don't think it's been done in decades. Like somebody brought in a proposal to review, to rebuild a building up at the Ocean View, and that's the one I remember specifically. Maybe something to think about.
Yeah. Any other comments on rules of procedure? Please.
I had one, and I don't know if it necessarily goes in here. Since we've added the consent agenda, I didn't see that in here.
So we're permitted to do that under Robert's rules.
Right. Do we need
Which-
to, which really my
which
question is, should it
govern-
be in here?
I mean,
Does it need to be?
I'd be happy to, but I think we already have the authority to do that pursuant to Robert's rules.
The consent agenda is basically where you can bundle a number of things together and vote on them all at once versus literally last term, it was like each. I mean, yeah, it's just painful. And then the second is not for necessarily this document, but it triggered. I think we should go through this once it's adopted at another meeting and make sure that everybody's very clear on what is raise a question of privilege? Or what is lay on the table? You know?
okay, yeah,
I just
yeah.
don't know that everybody has consistent definitions of that,
Yes.
and I just want to make sure,
Yes, absolutely.
so that we can use this to our advantage.
We've been very fortunate to have cooperative and collegial, but at some point that may not be the case on an issue, so understanding that stuff is important.
There's no Robert's Rules default in here.
Yes, there is.
Okay, that's,
Yes, there is.
Number 21.
I wasn't sure if I was mixing this up with some other bylaws, so we don't need to
Right,
add anything.
The changes thus far, Marianne and Keisha, in section 13, change commission to committee, Public Facilities Review Committee. And then the line directly below that, after at the end of that sentence, after homepage, put it, insert instead of a period, a comma, or its successor as determined by the council, period.
And then you'd want to make that same change in number 14.
That's, yep.
Yep.
Just.
Okay, I
just,
wasn't sure if that, we
yep,
discussed
yep.
that.
And then the same changes in 14, i.e. commission to committee, and that comma or its successor as determined by the council, period. Okay. Then, in new 24 at the end, in both A and B, remove the strikeouts through in the Block Island Times in each section, and add after 15 the word calendar before days. Anything else, guys? Can I have a can we act on that with those changes, or do we have to see a clean copy? I'm good. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve these rules? Motion to approve the rules. Second.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. The ayes have it. 2 years, baby.
Yes, but since September 3rd, 2013, right?
Don't
no.
say we're not making progress.
I'm only looking for singles.
That's right, exactly. Terrific. Thank you, guys. I was wondering
I
what
don't
that one
think that's
was.
true. That it's amended May 18, 2020.
That may have been when we were.
Debating it.
Yeah.
So I think that the question should not be struck.
That date is underlined. We'll change that.
Good.
Oh, great. Terrific. The second item on our agenda today, I started to talk about earlier, sorry. The agenda says meet with Old Harbor Task Force. That's my mistake. Because it really, we had decided, the Old Harbor Task Force provided us with a 7 or 8 page memo with a number of their thoughts and reflections on the past season. Many of the bullet items, I think the members would agree, are recurring concerns and frustrations and maybe even some celebrations. But one of the great things about that memo, I thought, is that it catalyzed a lot of discussion. It was very, very, it was a very useful tool for sort of teasing out some of the things that I think a lot of us have either been thinking about, talking about, in my case, sometimes even obsessed with. So I think the 5 of us agreed that it would be worthwhile to put that memo on a council work session for discussion. Maybe just to sort of kick it off for some conversation, I sort of, I'm going to take a stab at something. In terms of near-term practical issues, I sort of have 2 categories. One is sort of the traffic and parking area. The other is sort of maybe this is too many things, but sort of the messaging, signage, the face that we put toward the visiting public in terms of cleanliness of downtown, et cetera. And one of the things that I think would be really worthwhile as we work on issues related to tone, approach, et cetera, is perhaps to put together a couple of working groups under these headings or what you decide the headings should be, and assign a couple of council members to each, and really drill down and get to work on those issue areas so that we don't have them crowding our agenda, but sort of go forth, work on these things. Marianne is already working on a number of things. For example, I think it's okay if I say, thanks to Andy Transu's work, we're engaged in a conversation with RIPTA about potentially having a tow lot up there. And I think one of the critical factors in the parking conversation has always been, okay, we have no stick because we have no tow lot. So on what would you say, Martha, 6 times over the last 2 years we've had conversations about parking and fights about parking, and it always boils down to we don't have a tow lot. Well, we're actually potentially starting to make some progress on that. So it seems like the timing on that, and I have no preconceived ideas other than the fact that I do agree we need a tow lot about traffic and parking, but I think it's a significant enough issue that we ought to have, sort of an informal working group where, and same true on messaging, because I think the town is, the town has an opportunity to be putting forth its own message. I think Marianne has been out front on this. I think Jess Willie actually has been really arguing for that. I think Molly has raised a number of times sort of signage issues, not just what the stop signs look like, but how do we direct people around town? How do we use signage to establish what our expectations are for our for visitors? All of those sorts of things. I have had, and I know Sven has had, conversations with a couple of large business owners who are really concerned about how some of the cleanliness downtown. What face are we putting out if we have some properties that that aren't maintaining their sidewalk, for example, et cetera. So anyway, I'm going to stop. But those are my 2 kind of broad areas. 2. We're going to multitask. I'll do 3, but
I'll just, a couple of things.
Please.
I think as far as the traffic, the parking, I just don't think we should get involved in trying to direct the police department to do what the police department are hired to do. We have a new chief coming on board. We have a chance to have new eyes, different perspective. They've got to prioritize. I do not want to have any kind of repeats of, we have to tell the police what to do, or what to enforce, or how to draw priorities. I mean, they'll see it. I feel really strongly about that. That's probably a broader policy issue that speaks to the, I don't know if it was on this list or somebody else's list, the whole business about the shifting of the decals on the mopeds. I mean, just leave it up to the police department to figure it out. I just think we're mucking where we shouldn't be and not doing any good on that. I think we need shade downtown is what we need. I will say that I do think that we, and I've said this at other meetings, that we tend to look at downtown and see everything that's wrong.
Mhm.
And we forget that the people who come in on the boat don't even see the working harbor. They see the National. They see the harbor side. They see the surf and the Spring House up on the hill, these grand old buildings. And that's where your eye goes. And very grateful for that. Yeah, trash is always going to be an issue. I see that we've got more trash cans coming, more solar trash cans. That's excellent. The wayfinding is, to me, just one of those things that should have gotten better with everyone walking around following maps on their phones, which has proven to be not that successful an experiment as somebody who's on the corner and gets lots and lots of questions about which way is High Street. I don't know about you can have task force, but it's just there's a lot of stuff here that to me is just let people do their jobs. And I understand the intent, and I think there are things that certainly need to be looked at. But I think we need to prioritize, because this is what happens. We have lists that are several pages long, and we just don't ever get beyond several pages long. I mean, the visitor center, again, that goes back to wayfinding. They've had nice signs down there for Block Island, but try to figure out where you are and where you're headed.
Mhm.
And if we could possibly get rid of all the bad maps that people hand out in this town, we'd be
Mhm.
way ahead. I don't see that happening.
Anybody else, Molly?
I hate to disagree with Martha
okay.
on so many
That's
things. But I
Expect it.
don't agree that we should just let things be.
That's not what I said. I said, I
I-
think that there are things that we should not interfere in, that other people are far better qualified to determine.
I think it's okay for us to set an expectation though.
Mhm.
And I think it's, with the new police chief coming in, I don't want to micromanage at all, but I do think the council, it would be okay for the council to set an expectation. But this is what we're hoping is going to happen. And not immediately, obviously, right? But we don't need to leave him to figure out what the priorities are. We could say what our priorities are. As far as wayfinding, I do think that's important. I think it would be really helpful, when you see people standing in the middle of the road on the west side with the bad map, trying to figure out where they are. I think it would be helpful, even if they were signs that were only up in the summertime, to have a sign that says airport 2.5 miles, Old Harbor 3.5 miles, like, so that people can get some sort of sense of where they are and where they, like, how long is it going to take them to get where they want to go. It's not that tricky, right? And they don't have to be everywhere, just occasionally.
We actually used to have them. It was probably like 40 years ago, and I didn't realize they were gone until I looked for them.
Right. So I don't know.
When you were trying to find your way to the airport.
Well, no,
You know where you're
I
going.
I can go to the airports, the west side that screws me up. You all know that.
It does.
Stop.
But if I can build on Molly's
Please.
comment a little
Yeah.
bit, I'm not sure that signage versus being able to get on your phone and figure it out, which is better. And now so many people are getting used to looking at a phone and saying, where is the airport, versus having 30 signs up. But I think there has to be a discussion as to that. So whatever that group decides, that would be good, but I just don't want to, I don't need 2 yellow signs on each side of the road saying there's something coming up.
No,
That
no,
was it. That
I'm
was a
talking
comment
about,
too.
like signs that sort of match what our road
understand.
signs are, which are just stenciled wooden signs. But if we put the signs up, right, if we have our road department put the signs up, they can put them up in a location where people, they're off the road, in an area where there's a clear view in two directions. I'm talking about like giving people helpful information at a
Yeah,
location that's
that's good.
convenient to them and the people trying to drive on the road, right? So maybe at the end of Pilot Hill, but not around the corner on the side of the road, right? So
You mean Molly, where people can actually see them?
Yes.
where people can see them and where
Yes.
they can stop on their bicycle, right? So that when I come around a corner in my car, I'm not, or you, whoever, that you're not about to
Right.
smack into them standing in the middle of the road with their phone.
Right.
You know,
My
that's
point
what
was
they're
just-
doing.
Right. My point was just, let's look at technology and signage. I think there's a combination of all of it.
Well,
And by the way, I don't believe, in fact, I'm very certain of this, that there is a sign anywhere on this island on the streets named Water Street.
yeah, I don't think there's a
I
sign
know there's not. I have one in, anyway,
that used to be.
I know there's not, which is amazing to me. So if you want to try and find Water Street, you have to ask somebody. There is no street sign saying Water Street.
You have the one that you stole when you were in high school?
No, grammar school.
Oh.
Well, it's like when people ask how to get somewhere that involves going to the end of the street and turning onto Dodge Street, and they say, what's the name of the, I say, turn. They say, what's the name of the street? And I say, it's Dodge Street, but there's no sign. So it's just, trust me, there's
Yeah.
no other way you can go.
Yeah.
But I think the signs that they have, I don't want those horrible green signs that we have at Bridgegate. I've always hated those. I know they're recognizable. I know people see them other places, but lots of other towns in Rhode Island have the historic brown and white signs.
They
One-
should have told.
One of the things that I sort of put in this group around signage and messaging is we have talked for a couple of years, I think, about a message from Block Island, for example, on the ferry video screens. I think it would be worthwhile to have a group to talk about what that ought to look like. And maybe it's more than one, and maybe it's, whatever, half dozen of our young people working on it or whatever. But it's important, I think.
So I already reached out to Interstate Navigation. I think if you're looking to get a group to do that, they need to probably have started it yesterday. It's my understanding. And that's why I reached out to them based on the meeting that we had with Interstate, I guess in the fall, that they start doing that at the end of January.
I think it's wonderful that you reached out to them. What are we going to say? Who's going to say it?
At this point, what I was looking at is myself and the police chief and working with someone with Interstate Navigation with them as it relates to how they go about doing video recording and stuff like that.
So I say this respectfully, I'm not sure I agree with that. I'm not sure that you and the police chief is the right messenger. It may be, for example, that we decide that these are the 5 things we want to hit, and it's not a law enforcement message, but a kids talking about how how to behave on Block Island, or it may be 4 different things. I guess that's my point. I don't necessarily agree that that's the
And that's
approach.
fine, but
Yeah,
where I'm going with this is, if we're going to do that, then we need to know now and probably.
that's why we're meeting and having this conversation.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we have to get on it.
So maybe we could start by talking to Interstate about the posters on the boat. They rent poster space. Maybe Marion's correct and we don't have time to put together a video, but I think we could certainly rent a poster space and come up with a 2x3 foot poster in the time frame that we have. For
So
starters.
Marianne's correct. We could have started yesterday. Because our business does both, there's time, but there's not a month. You got to get moving now. If it's going to happen, we got to move now on all of that, to your point.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful, to work on that particular thing, but then generally around, signage, you know, a group with the chamber that works on the cleanliness of downtown. That sort of thing I think is really important as well. Works with Mike Shea, works with, you know, and by the way, I don't, I think we're just as likely to get good results by celebrating, as Martha points out appropriately often, celebrating the places that do it really well. You know, I don't view this, you know, in my mind as directing the police chief to enforce litter ordinances on the 4th of July. That's, but for example, Martha's pointed this out for quite a while. Star did a spectacular job on their facade, right? And we don't remember or celebrate that, and we ought to. You know, the National. You know, there are a lot of property owners who do an incredible job, and we ought to be thanking them and celebrating them as well.
So I wonder, Marion, like, I believe there's an ordinance that says that if you have a sidewalk downtown, you need to maintain it, right?
I would have to double check that, but I'm going to assume it.
So I would say, as a starter, perhaps we could ask if the town, I guess we'd be asking if you could do this, right? Could send a reminder, maybe with an attachment of that ordinance out to business owners right now, because what I'm seeing is that if it snows, we need people to shovel their walk. They're responsible for shoveling their walk, right? And right now we don't have an afternoon school bus driver. And so all those children are walking home, and they're walking down High Street, and they're walking through town to go to the library or to catch a ride home from downtown. And if it snows, all those children are going to be walking in the road. Because it's the responsibility of the homeowner or the property, you know, the property owner or the business owner to shovel all those walks. And we all know very well from the past that that doesn't happen. So I'd like to sort of avoid a problem
But-
that could potentially, if we ever get snow.
But I think,
Like,
but Molly, I
Yes.
think where Keith, what I heard Keith saying was, rather than directing Mary Ann to do all this stuff or whatever, let's get a small group quickly together that would decide a number of those things. I mean, you picked one that could be this weekend, but I guess if there's, what I heard Keith say was a small working group working on, I think you said messaging, and the other one was more on cleanliness and cleanup or whatever. Or maybe there are more, but I think it would be nice if there were some minds that got together and said, okay, what are the big things? For example, there are a number of businesses that do an incredible job on their sidewalk, amazing job, but nobody's paying attention across the street where there's no, it's just land. And so people walk out, put the cigarette butts in the ground, walk back in, and, you know, next thing you know, there's cigarette butts there. So I guess it would be interesting to have a group of people.
I'm just asking that in the meantime, if it snows, I'm just saying we're going to have kids walking in the road on the way home because we don't have an afternoon school bus driver. I'm just saying it's like a domino effect thing. So that you know that's going to happen. But in the meantime, we can have a conversation about this. Absolutely. And the piece of property where where all those parks are, the town is the owner there. So the town road crew is going to have to do that sidewalk.
Jess, did you have something you wanted to say?
Willie, Block Island Tourism Council. Just that I had heard recently that there is a waiting list to get onto those posters, and so it's already full is what I'm saying. So even if you do develop something, there might not be space now or whatever, or maybe you could get somebody who already has space to give up their space for you to take it, like
Yeah.
the Tourism Council.
Yeah. Or
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if there's no space, you might be able to get something in there. That's all I was gonna say is that they're already sold out, so,
terrific.
yeah.
Neil, what do you, you have, I know you have to go in 5 minutes. on that. Right. 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 No, that's a good point. So what do people think about putting together just a couple of working groups on this stuff? I know Martha, I think Martha raises a really good point because, for what it's worth, I do not specifically don't view this as being, oversight over anyone, but these issues come up over and over and over and over again, relying on sort of the existing infrastructure, and they're the same issues. So let's figure out if there are 3 things that a traffic and parking group recommends to the town council or and go there if they're acceptable. Similarly on, messaging, cleanliness, signage, whatever. Have at it, because otherwise we're going to be having, roughly the same conversation in June, and I just don't want to do that.
So, go ahead.
Who owns parking? I mean, traffic, I get, to Martha, to your point.
Yeah.
Traffic is a police thing, in my eyes. But parking enforcement might be police, but parking is the town council to come up with,
Mhm.
how do we manage parking? Yeah, well, for town. Yeah, public parking. So.
There's
we've
virtually
heard people
none.
say over and over, town's a mess. People are parking there longer term. People can't get in to go to restaurants. And I don't, my problem is, I don't know what the town has tried to do in the past, but why isn't there 2-hour parking? And, that gives you time to have dinner, time to shop, move your car. If you don't, we're going to ticket you. And when I was thinking about it, when I sent you the email,
yeah.
it was, well, we have nowhere to, so you could rack up tickets. And what are we doing to you?
Yeah.
They know it's kind of the no
Right.
stick, but now
Yeah.
if you can tow it because they have 10 tickets and they're not paying, we've got their car. It just seems like there's some easy wins to be able to do, to try and get it in place. So I would be happy to take a parking committee or whatever that is
Great.
to run with if some folks want to be involved.
Terrific.
So I would definitely say on the police advisory committee. So I do think we should take action, because I just want to say that your group, Old Harbor Task Force, you sent us this entire proposal or report. On police advisory, we asked for lots of public feedback and we got lots of public feedback, but you didn't send us this report, so we would do nothing with it. And people didn't respond to the police advisory, so that we would do nothing with their ideas and requests. And so I think we're obligated to do something, just like Keith was saying, like, we have to do something, at least try. That's how I look at it.
I don't. I mean, I off the top of my head, I don't. I think, my sense is that, as I said earlier, you guys have done extraordinary work and send us a very similar memo every year, and I'm trying to sort of move us off of that. Move us off of that time and sort of, so I would view your input, working with the groups who are working on this as essential, because you in all likelihood have ideas. So that I don't have, but I don't have anything specific, sort of, would you please go and X or Y or Z.
But as I see it, Keith, just to make sure we're clear on your vision, is you've got this, I'm going to pick it up on trash in Old Harbor, just to use that as an example. If there's a group on trash and cleanup and all that in Old Harbor, that group has a focus of this. Old Harbor Task Force has a lot of things in their bailiwick, of which some of it's trash. And so their Venn diagram is a little bit of an overlap. And so, versus, oh, we're duplicating and, layering stuff. I see this as pieces that, could fold together. At least from my point of view, I think cleaning up, and by the way, Mike Shea does an amazing job on public land. I think cleaning up and messaging are two big ones. If Neil wants to grab parking, that's great too, that's a long road.
Sure. I do think that, what everybody has to recognize is that basically everything comes from the landing.
Yep,
And
yep.
one of the problems that I've been seeing, people are now parking below the church to go on the boat.
Yes.
And that's happening in wintertime.
Yes.
And I don't know how we're going to get any kind of, all the space that we have is being used by people who have to park at the boat.
Mm-hmm.
People park, I think one of the reasons they shut off the Manassas parking lot was people were parking
Yep.
there and
Mhm.
people park at the, again, below the church and take out all this beach paraphernalia. And what's going on here? But I've seen it enough times that
Yeah.
it's happens. It's kind of, amazing
Wellness
what,
Way. People park on Wellness Way.
it's amazing what you
right.
see if you're
Yeah.
actually downtown for a few hours and not trying to, make your way through without hitting somebody or being hit. I don't have any solution to any of that. I do know there was one thing that we did have some success with. It's a little off what the track is here, but I think it's terribly important. And we talk about setting tone and messaging. And we're never going to be able to have the kind of budget that some of the people were trying to counter do. But I do know that it was the police chief who went on the radio a few years, this is a number of years ago now, after we'd had all that trouble at the surf, and several times made an announcement or public service or whatever, that if you came over here and you misbehaved badly, you were going to get arrested. And it did have some impact.
Yeah.
It took a year or two, but it really did have some impact. And I think we have to look at what did work, take all of the who was mad at whom out of it and just
Yes.
forget all of that and say what did work.
Yes.
Just remove the personalities, because you can't throw something out because you got mad for a day if you're still mad at for 3 years later.
Yes.
Welcome to Block Island.
Well, if Neil is gonna grab parking, I'm very happy with anybody else to work on messaging.
Why don't you and Molly work on that? Is that
Good.
okay, Molly?
On messaging.
That
Yeah, you gonna do
includes
street signs?
cleanliness.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
Street
Oh,
signs?
I wanted messaging. I
What
didn't
about-
want trash.
What about street signs?
This subgroup is defined as messaging and directionals and communication, not, no, just, you put it in trash, that's fine. But I also think, I'd love to, if Molly would agree, I think Jess would be a great person on that. Maybe Megan, like get
Yeah,
people who are
yeah.
doing a lot around the
Yeah,
communication and
absolutely.
how do we do it? And I think Jess especially, because they've done a nice job with the bike paths and, yeah. So we can get a little group together and do it.
Sean?
Sean McGarry, I'm a member of the Old Harbor Task Force. This meeting was explained to me, it was a joint meeting between the town council and the Old Harbor Task Force. And on your agenda it says discussion, so I've been at work since 6:30 this morning. I came here this afternoon to have a joint discussion with the town council about the issues that we submitted. I don't know when we're going to be giving and taking, but
Giveaway. That's why I've said twice during the meeting that I made a mistake on the agenda, because this was a work session for the town council to talk about this stuff. I really appreciate the fact that you came.
so we can talk quickly about, we've put in this request, not a request, just survey results from the committee about our concerns year after year after year. And, not a lot seems to get done, but I can tell you when it comes to the trash and the cleanliness, individual organizations have kind of taken on that duty themselves.
Yes.
And probably one of the largest impacts was the Tourism Council funding a maintenance person on the weekends from using the road crew to go around. Block Island Recycling, which I'm part of, also put a dumpster in the inner basin. If you're not familiar with the inner basin, that's where boats anchor. So that those people had a place to throw their trash, because where they were throwing it was just beside the tippy cans and gets strewn all over the place. So, those two aspects did an incredible job of cleaning up the downtown area. So in our discussions at the Old Harbor Task Force, it was that, we'd like to see the council continue to support, or at least the Tourism Council, or maybe together, support that additional person. When you have a long weekend, you're not going to see a road crew person, for 3 days. So a lot can happen downtown, and having that person available is big, because a lot happens over the weekend.
Although Mike
downtown.
on those 3-day weekends comes out at 5 o'clock with the street sweep,
He
5
does.
AM, and, he's extraordinary on that. Yeah. So just to repeat, you guys have done an extraordinary job. You send the same memo, and I mean, every year about particular problems that we have that are valid and essential for us to start tackling. As Marianne said, we're just trying to hit some singles here, and not have to have the same lament at the end of every season. So if one of the things we need to do is figure out a way to finance extra solar, big bellies, then let's talk about how to figure that out. Your expertise on that is essential, I think.
The Tourism Council has bought a set. Block Island Recycling bought a set. The Solar Initiative bought 5 sets. The Resource Recovery Corporation supplied 3. And I believe we're asking the town to fund 1 set.
Oh, great.
And that'll pretty much round out what we do in Old Harbor. We're the Old Harbor Task Force, but as you know, not a lot is done in
I
New Harbor.
know.
There's like next to nothing for trash service in New Harbor. I mean, there's a lot of things for the boaters, places for them to dispose of their trash, but not for their street trash. I'd like to give the other members a chance to speak also, but some of the things we identified, are safety issues like lighting on Weldon's Way, sidewalks on Weldon's Way. Those are long-term planning things we
Yep.
know. So we'd like to see those, discussed, and, maybe get some progress reports on where those things are headed. And the other big thing is, and Martha talks about how people see this Victorian town and how beautiful it is, but we constantly are discussing how our zoning ordinances are just being balked at because everyone puts all of their display material out on the street.
Yep.
Flags go up. It just blinds you from this beautiful Victorian
Yep.
town. And that's kind of the trademark of what we are and what our existence is. So we need to do everything we can to protect that, that, not that it's a facade. And you talk about the Star Department Store and the way they restore, any restoration project should be heavily scrutinized by the Historic District Commission, and they should, be guiding that discussion. And, we need to get zoning enforcement when it comes to the downtown banners and displays. And we always talk about how there's no enforcement, but then there's the catch-22. Someone gets a notice of violation, and then there's a period of time where they're able to appeal. And by the time the
Yeah.
appeal is heard, the season is over.
Yep.
So we've got to find a way to have instantaneous
We do.
gratification with our enforcement when it comes to zoning issues. And these are things we talk about all the time. But like I said, I'd like to let my other members contribute also, because we spend a lot of time discussing these issues, and we just don't publish this letter.
Could I
I
just
know-
ask you a quick question before you go about garbage though in New Harbor?
Or
Right?
Old Harbor. Task Force.
I know you're Old Harbor Task Force, but you are garbage. The garbage expert.
I think it's called recycling.
You are, yes, you are the trash expert. So I just want to ask, like, if we were to get garbage, like, are there any garbage cans in New Harbor?
At
There's dumpsters, but are there any of
There
those
are a
big
lot of
bellies?
There's a lot of waste that comes through the pond. It's like its own separate city over there. And you have, substantial exposure to trash from that pond. But the only place there's a street trash cans is at the restroom at Bimmy.
Okay, so if
They
we,
have cans at the marinas and stuff like that.
Yes, but
Yeah.
those are supplied for by the businesses. But
I'm just saying.
So-
you should have something along this. You have a sidewalk that runs basically from town to Champlin's Marina. And along that sidewalk route, there's no trash disposal whatsoever.
right,
It
so,
doesn't have to be a bunch of big bellies, but there should be something there so that somebody just doesn't toss it into the reeds or the bushes, because when it all fades away and you see what's hidden in those bushes from your collection you did
Yeah.
at the Ocean View Pavilion.
so my question is, like, because your truck has to be able to stop and empty those, right? So you must have given some thought to, like, where would you put them? If you were gonna put them in New Harbor, where would you put them?
Like I said, you'd want them from your whole route where you start in town, but not, every feed. It would, I'm not an engineer, and like you said, there's issues with how you would service them, so. But I think they should be spread evenly, but not every block, maybe two on Ocean Avenue, Ocean Avenue and Ocean Avenue continues all the way down to Paynes, correct? Or is that, yes, so maybe 4 on Ocean Avenue, 2 on the town side and 2 on the other side, and then 2 on the West Side Road.
Didn't there used to be one somewhere in the vicinity of the State Garage, the depot?
Yes, there was one at the corner there. Corner of Beach and Ocean Avenue, directly across the street from the police station.
That far.
But I'd like to have other members talk and contribute also, so.
Could I just say one other thing? I know I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but I think this is a really good example that Sean's talking about the trash facilities that we have and how well they work, and we need more of them, which is not the same thing as saying there's trash all over the place. Because if you just say there's trash all over the place, you're just going to get more trash. And if you say we need more, that this works, let's do more of it, instead of it's all. Well, but that's not how it's led. That's not the messaging that comes across.
Oh, go ahead,
So
Cindy.
Cindy or anybody.
Yes.
You're on the committee.
Cindy Pappas.
You're on the committee with Neil, by
Oh, no.
the way.
And this toll lot, I've heard something about it, so it was interesting to hear that that's in the works possibly. But to me, that seems to be punitive, negative. We've got many vehicles coming over here. I don't know that there is a way to manage the number of vehicles coming to the island, but that's where it starts. And then, so we're allowing these people to come, we're inviting them to come, and then we're going to ticket and tow because they have no place to park. So we've got a limited geographic area, and maybe the tow lot and punitive towing is part of the whole package. But to me, it seems to be important that we be proactive and really, and I don't have the answer to how one is proactive, but I do think that there are certain spots that should be acquired by the town, if possible, to create some parking areas, because this is not a problem that's going to go away. It will, anybody who's been here for 10 years, 20 years can see exponentially. The cars are bigger, there are more cars. There's no place to put them. And I think that trying to acquire some additional land, and I think there could be some places in the downtown area, Chapel Street, and be
Sullivan Real Estate.
proactive.
No,
We're gonna
I,
hire a valet for my driveway because we pack so tightly in there. All we do all day long is move each other's cars. But I think
Yeah,
we need
I-
to be proactive and
agree.
really
in.
research.
I'm in. That's
where-
part of, I mean, I would love it if somebody came and said, we need to acquire X piece of property for parking. Great. And I mean, you've probably been here during these meetings where one of the fundamental conclusions around the parking issue is always that we have no ability to tow anyone anywhere. So it's not because I'm being the fun police. It's just, we don't have that arrow in our quiver at all at this point.
Well, I would just urge
yeah.
that proactive approach of being able to provide.
Great, that's part of why we're having this meeting, we're trying, I mean, I think the five of us are trying to not have this go into the files,
Right.
but actually start taking some steps.
And that's a
Yes.
suggestion from our group that. we should be
Absolutely.
proactive.
It's,
And then hand in hand with that goes back to the old dialogue of public transportation, which is
Yes.
a piece of that as well, being able to provide alternatives to everybody bringing their 3-4 cars to the island.
absolutely.
Margie Cummings, and I'll follow up on a couple things. One having to do with electric scooters and electric bikes. If you are going to do any kind of regulations on those, they need to be done ASAP because they are increasing the amount every year. They are a wonderful mode of transportation, but I think we need to look at some safety issues. This may be something you want to look at with our new police chief. But I do think it needs to be done sooner rather than later because it could get out of hand the same way the mopeds have, and then it's hard
Yes.
to regulate them.
Yep.
So I think I would put that at the top of one of the top of the list, not on the back burner. The other thing that we are concerned about, and I'm bringing it up again, that's Weldon's Way and the lighting. I've talked to, actually, we've talked to you about it, Mary Ann. I've also talked to Jeff about it. We are considering several ways of maybe doing some solar. And I've asked Jeff to kind of take a look at some of this stuff and maybe work with Mary Ann, and then we'll touch base in our March meeting and see if we can
Fantastic.
continue to work with that. Because we really do want to make that a safer area. It is not safe now if you're there after dark.
Yeah.
And then there are lots of people there for ice cream cones with little kids, and you just need to worry
Yep.
about those things.
That's a really good point. And one of the challenges that I have at least is we have these meetings and we assume because we've had these conversations that everybody knows that we've had these conversations, like, of course. So, but I want to assure you that we had a meeting on Friday with with Tina Spears and Alana DeMario, our new state rep and our new state senator. And one of the key issues that we raised were these electric scooters and electric bikes. And whether, see, the challenge with them is that they're not registered. They don't have licenses. So that it's really sort of they're in this weird legal place. And
I
they're-
didn't say it
and
was
they're-
going to be easy.
No, but I mean, I'm raising this because we hear you. And we've got to figure out a path.
Yeah,
And it's not
mean-
clear what we can do and what we can't do. And we're
Helmets
trying
might
to
be a
figure
good
that out.
place to start. I looked at the kids on those scooters last summer. I thought, one of those goes head over heels. The first thing they're going to hit is their heads, and there's
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
in that particular area that was wearing a helmet. So that was one concern that.
So let me just
Yeah,
reiterate what Keith said. So one of the big, and we're all on the same page about this, is might be more of a state issue. So one of the goals is, and that was the discussion with the representative, the senator, is are there other communities? As you may know, up in Providence, ATVs have become a big problem, and, you know, sort of groups of motorbikes and ATVs. And maybe we can partner with some other towns and cities to try and get control of this, because this is sort of one of those state things versus a town. And how do we maintain decorum and safety and health without any kind of state legislation on it? So I just want to make sure
That's okay.
everybody here do that.
Pass the word along. Okay. And the last thing is, I did not, in this memo that you got this past fall, we did not complain about trash. We were very happy to not complain about trash this year. Just thought I'd mention that. Okay, anybody else in the committee?
I just want to reiterate the need for sidewalks, not just for the school children, but for the people. We have huge senior groups that come over here on buses, and they don't dare go too far from the town. They love the benches that Old Harbor and that you've backed, but there isn't walking space that's safe. And I think the other safety issue is key is the lighting going down Weldon's Way and even up High Street. We encourage people. There are more and more places that people are staying that they don't bring cars to. We do have a wonderful sidewalk, and that was, but we do also need lighting. You can go just so many steps, and I think I would look at the entire Old Harbor area in terms of how we allocate lighting for people, and not during the day to come out and assess it in the evening. You can go just so far. You can walk down High Street if you come from the school at a meeting, and all of a sudden it's pitch black. And so I really feel we need to seriously look at the need for lighting and as many sidewalks or safe walking areas for our kids, for our visitors, for our homeowners, and for our particularly seniors. Thank you.
Hey, Sean, come on up.
Sean McGarry again. The Old Harbor Task Force is a subcommittee of the town council. So we are the working group that the town council has organized to work on these things. And, you know, we do have some action items. Cindy talks about one, and that's you need to concentrate on acquisition of property. You have to be spontaneous with it. Setting money aside in a bank, you know, not necessarily the bank, but a way that you can access funds quickly when a piece of property comes up for sale that you can move on. If you go through the process of having to go to a financial town meeting and then issue bonds and all of that, the time is gone and you've missed your opportunity. So you need to look at, you know, determining what kind of funds are you going to need in the short term to do immediate acquisitions when ideal pieces of property come up. One is already available next to St. Andrews, owned by Sherlyn Goburn. That's on the market for sale. You should be seriously looking at as a viable parking lot for the downtown area. The discussion on the scooters initiated when the companies who leave the scooters aside and you can go with your credit card and open up the scooter. We were concerned that people would start to do that here. They would bring those over here in the back of a truck and leave them somewhere. We'd like to see an ordinance passed not allowing that to occur on Block Island. I think you've looked at it moderately in the past, but it's something, you know, this is years ago we discussed this, but you know, we've been lucky so far that nothing like that's happened. So, and you know, we want to make sure that you get the planning going on Weldon's Way with the lighting and the sidewalks, and you know, give us an update of where that project falls in the TIPS project. Is it TIPS that it's? And so, you know, I get the push that, you know, we need to be doing more as a working group of giving solid ideas to you and
So
asking you to follow through.
we're not trying to push you. I mean,
Oh.
when was the last time the Old Harbor Task Force's annual report was on 3 agendas in the month of January? We're here because we take this seriously, and we're not trying to send a message to anybody except out there that we're going to do stuff.
But I feel like maybe we're not doing what we should be. We're not giving you specific ideas, you know?
No, I think your list was,
I didn't know anything
Yeah.
was done years on it. I
yeah.
think now- Sorry, I think now you're hearing, or at least I hope you're hearing, thank you. Now let's start acting on it. And if you're not hearing that, then we got to work on hearing. But that's the intention of what's being said, is thanks for writing it. And actually Molly really brought it up at a meeting ago or two. And I think, yeah, so now we got to get it all together and charge and do something actually. Or at least say we're going to do something.
All right, so we have our groups. Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay. I just fear to start because I never finish.
Yeah, just,
I never finish. Another thing that is not often mentioned is we work really, really hard to make downtown look better,
mhm.
really hard. And a lot of our input has to do with making the downtown look better. We have a lot of things that we'd like to do to make the downtown look better. We'd like to have some input from you guys too, to tell us how you'd like us to do that. We have our thoughts, and I think some were presented in this. Obviously, if we have nicer parking, there's not so many cars, that looks better. Obviously, if there's not so many signs and they're coordinated so it doesn't look like Mission Mash, that looks better. But also in terms of our pocket parks, we have a big project going forward with what we're going to join 2 pieces of the Mary D Park to make it a bigger park. I think it'll be quite beautiful. And we set it on ourselves to, we ask money from you guys sometimes, but we also raise a lot ourselves.
Mhm.
It's a
That's for sure.
committee that I'm proud to be on because we work terrifically hard. Marky is an amazing fearless leader who is always sticking her face out to let you know what we need and want. I think that I'll put the ball in your park, your park a little bit too, so that if you want to ask us for something specific, could we challenge you guys to give us a plan, help us have a plan that you can submit to us so that we have a little more direction, because we don't have the time to do that. Let us know what you want specifically. And I, for one, would like to know what you'd like to do specifically about what downtown looks like. Because yeah, we see the pretty buildings on that side, as Martha noted, but there's plenty of buildings that are not looking so pretty on the other end
Yeah.
of town. How can we fix that? Because we are practical, but we're also out to beautify.
Sure.
So
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. This was terrific. Judy, sea level rise, item 3,
More thing.
please.
You don't have to leave.
Oh, that's
Exactly, exactly.
Judy, I just wanted to say one thing. I really appreciate the fact that you seem to be burying the wires isn't going to happen immediately, and let's get something done in the meantime. Because I feel like things like better lighting have been put off for so long because, oh, we're going to do this grand plan, we're going to bury the electric wires downtown, and it's just not going to happen. And it looks like you're looking more at reality now and what we can get done. And I've always felt that if you pull streetlights, short lights are going to give you illumination. It's going to pull the eye down anyway, and you won't notice them as much. I'd like to get rid of them, but I think practicality, I think you've really come through on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, guys.
And High Street is brutally dark.
So we have historic district at 6. So we have to like half an hour, if that's okay. Is that enough
Oh,
time, do you think,
geez,
Judy?
yeah.
Okay, great. Terrific.
15 minutes,
Okay, great.
however long it takes me to read. Hi, my name is Judith Gray. I live at 1192 Sands Pond Road, and I'm speaking with you today as the chair of the Block Island Sea Level Rise Committee. I've given you a script of what I am saying for the record. And before I start, I just want to say that as terms of messages related to the Sea Level Rise Committee, keep people off the dunes. And if you can find a nice way to say that, like respect the dunes, don't walk on them, whatever it is, That's a message that is very important to the Sea Level Rise Committee. And,
Judy?
yes,
Since I haven't had any luck with this over the past 6 years, the very first thing you see when you turn down Cornack, the very first access is over the dunes. Can we
yes.
get
and-
that post removed?
Yes, and we've talked, Mike Shea has talked about that. Yes, yes, because if you look at
And people use it. We don't even need to look at it, just let's get it removed.
Right.
We don't need it.
Part of the,
I mean, we can talk about messaging all we like, but if that's the first message we send to people going down the neck road, game over.
if you look at the satellite image, you can see all the paths and that's breaking that dune down. If we just moved that marker down. Yes, yeah. And actually, when Mike Shea came and spoke to our committee, that was one of the things that he said that he wanted to work on with us on. Yes. Okay, so I told you who I am. So let me get on with the, one more thing, sorry. On the lighting, please do down lighting, not globes. I have a neighbor who has their outdoor light on all through the winter and it's the only thing you can see forever and ever. And I think that light pollution is a real issue. And so please consider down lighting. Now back to the Sea Level Rise Committee. In November of 2021, the Town Council created the Sea Level Rise Committee and charged it to understand the potential local impacts posed by sea level rise, to assess the community's vulnerabilities, engage citizens, and assist the town to assess, recommend, and implement mitigation projects or other priority actions that will improve Block Island's coastal resiliency. I may be the person who's standing here right now, but I'm representing the hard work of many people. Today, I'll give you a short update on the last 15 months of activity, describe our near and long-term goals, and ask for the Town Council's support. So over the last 15 months, the Block Island Sea Level Rise Committee has been getting educated, building relationships, setting priorities, and trying to figure out how this small community can best address the challenges of sea level rise. I've handed out to you a summary of the meetings we've held so far and what we've accomplished at each of those meetings to show the range of subjects we've addressed, our priority setting process, and the relationships that we continue to build. The committee wants you to understand the seriousness with which we take our charge. And I'm happy to speak with you more about anything on the list. However, I prefer to spend my time with you speaking of the future. Before I present our priorities, I'd like to say a few words about our partners and who is assisting the Block Island Sea Level Rise Committee. Last summer, we met with Dr. Michael Oppenheimer, was well known to all of us, Nobel Prize award-winning climate scientist and island homeowner. His biggest piece of advice to us was to just get started. It's easy with such a big problem as sea level rise to get bogged down with all the different projections and possible strategies. In the meantime, the seas are rising and the storms are getting stronger while we wait. The committee hopes this presentation will give you some options to consider so that we can get started and make our community safer and more resilient. I'd like to start with relationships and the relationships that we're building locally. To start, the most important relationship that the committee has is with its fellow citizens, our fellow islanders. We're well connected to the island's conservation organizations, all having representatives on the committee. To ensure the committee's goals and activities are consistent with those of the town, the committee has met with Mike Shea, Jeffrey Wright, John Brunig, and Dylan Chase, and is scheduling a meeting with Jim Jeremiah. We have been asking for their concerns and priorities relevant to sea level rise and will speak publicly to support budgets that build Block Island's resilience to sea level rise, waves, and storm surge. Planning for sea level rise must become a lens that the town's government applies to nearly everything it undertakes. The Sea Level Rise Committee will continue to advocate for this consideration whenever the town's government, boards, and staff are making decisions. Relationships statewide, I hope that you can see in the handout. of our meeting history, and that we've been meeting continually with Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management and the University of Rhode Island, as well as bringing in several experts from other institutions to advise us. In addition to Allison Ring's regular contact with the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, they also attended one of our Sea Level Rise meetings to advise the committee. We got 5 really good pieces of advice out of that meeting with DEM and the Infrastructure Bank. One was to focus on cost benefit analyses of projects that would protect island infrastructure to determine where dollars would go the furthest. And I'm happy to report that the URI Spring Senior Capstone class has a natural resource economics course, and they're going to be focusing on Block Island this year. And we've asked them to do some cost benefit analyses on our behalf. We're meeting with them on February 17th with the students to further that agenda. The second one was to choose small projects, small demonstrations that fit into a larger framework, and that is ongoing. And I hope that you can see that in our presentation.
What are those?
The projects?
Yeah, do you have?
Yes.
Like
Yep.
a half dozen or 2 or 1?
We have, I'll get there.
Oh, sorry.
Third recommendation was to flesh out areas of concern. And by that, I give you an example of the town beach pavilion as an area of concern. And so that is ongoing. Hopefully you'll learn more as I read on. Fourth recommendation was to coordinate with the Department of Transportation, DEM, CRMC, everybody and anybody to dissect components of projects to find sources of funding, so that maybe we can't fund the whole project, but if we can find sources of funding for parts of them, we'll pursue that. And most important of all for the talk today was the 5th recommendation was to look for technical assistance to build alternatives and write proposals. It's also important to note a partnership that was unanticipated, and that was with the URI Senior Capstone course. I think through some of the conversations that we've been having with Sea Grant and others at URI, the capstone course decided to focus on Block Island this year. The details of what the ocean engineering course, just this many details, 3 sentences worth is in the list of reading accomplishments. So you can see what the ocean engineering course is undertaking. And as I said, we're just starting now with the economics. Both of these classes will provide new and improved tools and information for the protection of infrastructure on Block Island at risk from sea level rise, waves, and storm surge. Now for the priorities, which I know you want to hear. Of the many issues that may be addressed, the Block Island Sea Level Rise Committee is focusing on 3 priority locations and 2 critical processes. The 3 locations are Corn Neck Road, Bridgegate Square, and the north end of Ocean Avenue. Underlying our selection of these locations is the long-term goal of the committee to keep the island connected for easy access to all town services. In the near term, the 2 critical processes on which we are focusing are public engagement and assessing and updating town ordinances, rules, regulations, codes, etc., to best accommodate the changes and flexibilities that may be required to address sea level rise. Corn Neck Road. How can we make Crescent Beach, Corn Neck Road resilient to sea level rise and climate change? In 2017, the town, with funding from the Infrastructure Bank, supported an initial design for Corn Neck Road. The next step is to vet alternatives and start the 60% design process. The town needs to hire, consult, whatever, provide some resources towards engineering and grant writing expertise to write this proposal. This is not within the expertise of the committee to write the 60% design proposal. To accomplish the Sea Level Rise Committee's long-term goal of keeping the island connected, we need to start now with trying to create a dune system that extends from the Old Harbor Jetty to Pots and Kettles that is resilient to sea level rise, waves, and storm surge. So Allison created this map of the beach system all the way from Mansion, Pots and Kettles to the jetty. And on it, she marked access points where there's vehicular access, walking access, legal rights of way, open space structures, etc. What we need to do now is try to create a dune system extending along that whole arc that is resilient to sea level rise. Right now, we have vulnerabilities. In particular, the town beach pavilion is not sustainable. The Sea Level Rise Committee seeks to balance access to the beach with protection of the beach and Corn Road. The Block Island Sea Level Rise Committee is proposing a nature-based solution or solutions of restoring the dune to protect Corn Road from damaging wave action, like what we saw in Hurricane Sandy across from the beachhead. We want to do that while still allowing appropriate foot, handicap, and vehicular access. We're focused on 3 breaks in the dune line near the beachhead, the town beach pavilion, and Scotch Beach. The committee has not assessed the effectiveness of filling in the opening near the beachhead ahead of storms, and I have nothing further to say about that at this time. Scotch Beach needs to be discussed as an easier gap to fill than the biggest gap of all at the town beach pavilion.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
So is the idea that we would, when we see a storm coming, block that, or would
That's what they do now.
Or would,
Oh, I mean, across from the beachhead, that's what they do now. When they anticipate a storm coming, they fill the gap, which is sometimes successful and sometimes not.
I feel like I was at one of the Sea Level Rise meetings where someone was talking about, instead of having the paths be perpendicular to the water,
Have them be serpentine.
have them be serpentine, is that
That's
right?
correct. Yeah, the idea of a serpentine path is to slow the wave action. There's a lot of downsides to that we're learning. For example, you're starting to erode the backside of the dune in addition to the front side. And so that was a proposed solution. Another one that we would like to consider, but have no expertise, we'd have to reach out to find it, is building up, for example, at Scotch Beach, building up the dune so that it's near the height of the rest of the dune line, and then providing some kind of access over it, whether it's a wooden driveway that needs to be maintained, or that we pull out in the winter, or, I mean, we have a lot of options that we need to consider. What we want to do is still provide access, walking, handicap access, and vehicular access as appropriate, as negotiated with the town and the citizens, but do that in a way that allows us to build up that dune line to protect Corn Road. The Corn Road, when it's flooded from the Great Salt Pond side, is a lot like the problems that we face in other parts of the state with rising seawaters that don't have a lot of wave action. That's one kind of problem. What we want to prevent is the kind of disaster that happened in Hurricane Sandy, where the waves are actually breaking on the roadbed and tearing it up.
Right.
So that's why we feel like this is like a first line of defense, is to build the dune, let the dune function the way a dune is supposed to function, where it gets the crap beat out of it during a storm and then builds up afterwards. And that's why it's a nature-based
Yep.
solution.
Thank you. Sorry to
No problem. So we will continue to work with the state. Yes. Yes.
Because there were 3 areas you mentioned, and being on the committee, I'll speak. Town beach pavilion, if you look at it now, pretty much water comes on either
Yeah.
side of it, sometimes underneath it. That is not a long-term sustainable building and location.
Correct.
What the long-term sustainable is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Get back to technical, do you move the building back? Do you fortify dunes? Do you have paths over? Do you have tunnels? I don't know, but if we think about resiliency in 10 years, 20 years, whatever the number is, that's probably not a very resilient situation. So think about it now start planning on it now, get funds now, engineering now, so that in 5 years, we can actually do something about it versus sitting here saying, oh, this is a mess.
Yeah, we don't want to be that, we don't want to be like the previous group where we're
I-
still 5 years later talking about the same thing.
I always say I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to ask it again.
Yes.
For years and years and years, the state put snow fencing on the beach in front of that beach house in the wintertime, and it worked. And nobody wants to revisit that.
We are happy to revisit the issue of snow fencing, especially as it is considered as an alternative with other alternatives, and that it is done in a way that doesn't degrade, that so that the snow fencing doesn't degrade into a hazard, which is what has happened in the past with
No,
the
it was,
wires.
I'm sorry, it was taken in every year. When I was a kid,
Right.
this is what happened. I lived here. I know what happened.
Mhm.
I've been lost in that labyrinth trying to get off that beach in the wintertime.
Right.
It was all over the beach, and I mean, the upright fences were
Right.
there. We had a bad storm in 1991. We had the perfect storm, and the next year we had 4 nor'easters. And after that, nobody ever wanted to hear about it again. The problem was it didn't get taken. It becomes a problem when it gets taken out. And those dunes, like the place that I was complaining about earlier, you must remember this, where the first point of access is, that used to be flat ground. And that dune has completely been just grown.
Yeah.
In our lifetimes, the beach, I don't know what's happened at the beach with all of the sand and I know what's happened. The beach, if you watch it, if you drive the Neck Road every day in the wintertime, you watch the beach. My dad always said this, the outer land says it. It's not something he made up. The beach comes in, it comes over the dunes. The dunes are so much higher than they were. We've got photographs, we know this. And they don't seem to be so much higher because the Neck Road is higher than it was a gazillion years ago, and the plain in between gradually has been filling in. We cut a lot of those. There were a lot more accesses 25 years ago. We shut off in between Scotch and.
I remember when
down.
I remember when that happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember
People
and
weren't
so
happy.
for those remnant walkways, we want to keep people using them, and we want to maintain them in a sustainable way.
Yeah,
And
they seem to
those are the
be
questions we're asking.
doing pretty well. But the beach, once they stopped doing any snow fencing, and I understand the problems, but it just seems like there's got to be a way of, it worked for so long.
Right.
And then it stopped.
Judy, wouldn't you say that the committee is very pro snow fence or pro sand capturing?
Yes, we're very pro sand capture, and we're willing to work with the road department who does that maintenance to figure out what the best solutions are. So the next step for Crescent Beach, Corn Neck Road is getting that professional help to work with the committee in the town to design and engineer solutions for Corn Neck Road. I'm going to say a few words about Bridgegate Square as a major hub for utilities, communications, and transportation. Bridgegate Square needs its own study to plan to address flooding and outflow backups attributed to high tides and storm surges. And this is being pursued right now with Mary Ann and company with the Department of Transportation. And I know Sven's been working on that. Ocean Avenue North. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen significant flooding during high tides and storm surges near the intersection of Ocean Avenue and West Side Road. The water levels and frequency of flooding events are both forecast to increase. Both of them are forecast to increase, so the situation will continue to worsen. Addressing flooding in this area is complex with both private and public interests being affected, but we can't look the other way. And the committee is committed to working with the town to request state and federal funds to start a flood study of this area and to develop a plan for the north end of Ocean Avenue. So those are our 3 priority locations. We will not ignore opportunities in other locations. For example, we've learned about marsh migration, and if there was a funding opportunity that was centered around marsh migration, we would stealthily leap at that opportunity there's just so much to do. We had to set some priorities for ourselves. So those are our 3 priority locations. The next 2 are processes. The first I'd like to address is ordinances. The Block Island Sea Level Rise Committee is likely to make recommendations in the future that may impact planning, zoning, and other ordinances, rules, regulations, codes, etc. The committee emphasizes the importance of reviewing existing ordinances and building code standards and will work with the town to highlight areas where there are opportunities to encourage more resilient development. A question for the town council to consider is whether you would like the Sea Level Rise Committee to lead this effort, or if it's more efficient to have town employee departments and other boards review their own documents with this goal in mind, with the Sea Level Rise Committee flicking the bic and, trying to keep everyone lighted and fired up and going. 2 members of the Block Island Sea Level Rise Committee are willing to assist in a review of town ordinances, rules, regulations, codes, etc., to make sure we're being forward thinking and creating flexibility to build for higher sea levels and storm surges. For example, in our recent marsh migration meeting, it was proposed that different standards may apply to what were identified in a URI study as tier 1 properties for marsh migration. So Sosha Cohen and Mary Anderson, who both sit on these boards, are on our committee and are interested in pursuing this. And we've already met once to figure out, what the next step is. The other process that we are emphasizing is public engagement. And once again, it's Sosha and Mary who are leading the charge on this. Now that the committee is starting to make recommendations, it's in our charge to engage citizens. So we've created a public communications framework, and Sosha and Mary are leading the effort to build community awareness of strategies we are advocating. And we anticipate we're working closely with the town on developing the appropriate forums for public engagement. And you can see just the little dabbling we've done if you go through the list of meetings we've had.
When you were out.
I'm almost done. So we've been meeting with the utilities, as I mentioned, to assess what their interests and needs are relevant to sea level rise. I'm going to skip down to the ferry and say we strongly encourage the town to engage in dialogue with Narragansett and the Department of Environmental Management regarding the ferry landings and how the 2 towns can work together to protect this infrastructure. And we stand ready to engage in that dialogue. We put together ideas of things that we thought would cost money. And so I have a long thing that you can read on your own, but it's mostly centers around hiring experts to plan, design, seek funding for, and implement engineering solutions. Help with grant writing and writing of documents to apply for state and federal funding, and figuring out priority engineering recommendations. And currently our town planner is doing an awesome job of supporting this committee. I can't tell you how lucky we feel to have Allison Ring working with us. But we anticipate that our interests with her and our requests of her will increase as studies and projects ramp up, and as sea level rise infiltrates every aspect of what she does in planning.
When you've been meeting with, I've forgotten the woman, Chafee, et cetera.
Yes.
Are there planning grants available?
Yes.
Sort of like the initial soft costs associated with this? stuff?
Yes,
'Cause
and that's the
worries
infrastructure
me.
bank. That's what we got funded in 2017 was
Great,
planning.
terrific,
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Did not get, yes, the NIF grant. Yeah, and Claire was the committee member that helped her write that. That's correct.
Genius, absolute
Genius. She's a
I was thinking
genius. Yeah. And we do plan to take advantage of the Infrastructure Bank Municipal Resilience Grants in the spring. Those grants require a 25% match from the town. And so I wanted to highlight that because that if we apply and are successful, that's a requirement. I want to say that now is the time to go after these and all funds related to climate change and sea level rise. It's a unique opportunity in my 40+ years working in climate science. We can suggest as a committee approaches, experts, and phases, but the projects need engineering expertise to pull them together.
Can I ask
Yes.
a question of you, probably through you to to the town manager? Are any of these costs capital costs? You know what I mean? Like, I was wonder sort of that gray area. Because presumably these projects will lead to capital expenditures. And I'm just curious about the extent to which.
So you're talking about the engineering and
yeah,
stuff like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we need, and Alice and I have been on numerous phone calls with
Sure.
a lot of these infrastructure grants. And one of the things recently we run, which we submitted something to Compete RI, and because we didn't have a formal plan. So one of the things Allison's I have started talking is how we get that
Right,
formal
right.
planning process.
yeah.
And we were on the phone, Allison and I, on a call recently about one of the resiliency with the infrastructure bank, with the municipal resiliency just last week. And they talked about a 25% match. Keep in mind, a lot of these 25% match also include in kind,
I was just going to say that.
which is real. So that's like half
Yeah.
of it's in kind,
Oh.
which
Yeah.
really brings the dollar
Yeah,
amount
that's very
really
helpful.
low. So what we're talking about with this is some planning documents
Right.
that we need to get done.
Yeah, I was just curious about how we categorize those things. Now, I don't mean that, one's easier than the other. I was just curious about whether we categorize preparing to make capital expenditures as part of capital expense, just an accounting question in a way, I guess.
And you probably will see in this year's 6-year long-term capital plan, some
Right.
of the information,
Sure.
some of the stuff
Yeah.
she presented.
Thank you,
I-
guys.
I-
that Judy spoke about. Yeah.
Thank you.
I again want to go on the record with something I always say. The Neck Road belongs to the state of Rhode Island.
Yes.
The state of Rhode Island rebuilt that entire road in 1964 when virtually nothing came from Block Island to the state. They get an extraordinary amount of money from us now. And everyone says you have to quantify it. Well, all you have to do is look at the meals tax to figure out how much sales tax is that we get, to figure out how much sales tax they get on meals and drink alone from this island. And it's a lot of money. And I feel like we just say the state won't pay for it. I just don't think, but we
Well,
probably,
I think that the approach that I would take is that we're going to partner with them. That's the approach that that is really the only way we can go forward, because we all own a piece of the problem. The road is theirs, but go ahead, Mary.
So what I was going to jump in, based on a conversation Sven and I had with Jim. Jim, Aaron's Bridge Race Grid, that's who we studied the conversation with. And so we had a conversation, and Jim is so knowledgeable on this island with the information he has. So what we asked Jim to do is write a memo for us as to what needs to be done there. After he does that, my next step, I now have my contact at RIDA, the woman I've been working with that got
Right,
us,
yeah,
that helped us with the 20 million. And what Jim had said to us, there'll be an economy of scales with RIDA to say, well, you're planning all this paving, now let's take a look at this.
While we're at it.
So
Yes. Yes.
that's very much in the works.
Oh, interesting.
Jim is in the process of writing something. I expect him out here probably sometime this month to look at the park and the tow lot and stuff like that. So I anticipate him wrapping that up probably in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll begin those conversations. You're right, it's the partnership
Yeah.
with RIDA and DEM and things like
Thank you
that.
Yes,
so-
which, thank you.
They have, this committee has really, especially with DEM, I just wrote to Terry Gray about something else, and he mentioned again, the committee again. So the relationships that this committee has started working on and cultivating state level has been unbelievable.
And I hope it helps the town in other areas as well. Thank you. Thank you.
again, I'm just going on the record. I don't understand why we just let this. They're not, what is that? It's a line from a movie about partners. And I can't remember what it is, but then
We don't
The
need
state,
to.
the state is not a partner in this, is that what you're trying to say?
well, they haven't been. There's a
I'm
partner,
making sure everybody gets
it's a state, no, I'm going from, it's a state road. And why are we just saying, oh, well, we'll be partners with them, we'll work with them. And I know that's a politic thing to
it's
say.
Much more than the road though. And I mean, we use the road as a catalyst of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's right. And we were trying to keep the connectivity and we'll get as much as we can out of them. And it's our beach and we need to protect the beach and we'll go forward hand in hand, do the best we can and keep trying. I agree with you 100% that they need to be at the table with cash in hand and we'll try and be as good as we can to make that happen. And you have all of what I had to say that I didn't get to say in front of you. But we do anticipate that most of the money will come from the state and federal government, and we look forward to partnering with the town. We take what you told us to do seriously, and please help us do our jobs.
Are there any questions for Judy?
Yes. Decades ago, there used to be two at the town beach pavilion, yes, there were two groins, yes. And they kind of, over time were growing and taken away. I'm just wondering, why were they put there in the first place? And does something like that help maybe? I wouldn't try and get a groin approved in the state of Rhode Island for, even if you paid me to do it, and certainly not for free. No, I don't, the problem with the beach down in front of the Surf Hotel and whatever it's called now, Block Island Beach House, whatever, it's starved of sand because of the groin that's next to it. And all the sand is on Ballard's Beach. So that's why groins work very well. And they capture sand. And what we're trying to do is keep the natural flow of sand along the beach. And there are solutions that we're proposing for that.
Another great example is Coast Guard, and the accretion that has happened along the jetty and along Coast Guard Road is unbelievable. And the destruction of the beaches along the dump and along Bean Point and all that is evidence. So,
Yes.
you got all this sand being captured and then all this starvation happening elsewhere.
The largest erosion on the island is at West Beach because it's starved of the sand. Yeah, sand flows south to north around the island.
There's a aerial photograph that shows it.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Hey, Judy, before you go,
Yes.
I just want to say, you've talked about all the wonderful help of the committee and Mary Ann and Allison, et cetera. I think it's important to thank you
Oh, thank
for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you very
Because
much.
I know because I know you, what your passion is, but also what your expertise is. And it's really helpful to someone like me who is a total layman on this stuff to know that there are people involved who actually have some sense of what we need to do so that you can say,
Just a
hey,
sense.
Keith, this is something you need to do. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you very much. Part of what you're saying is I'm a little bit BS proof, but not on the engineering and that,
Yeah.
and that's where we really have some concerns. Thank you for the acknowledgement. I appreciate it.
Can I ask you a quick question before you go away? I know we're short on time, but so I have two questions. One is, are we going to hear from you during the budget process? Right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I hope so. Okay. And then my other question was sort of silly. Do you have any idea what time you're meeting on February 17th?
Noon.
Is noon. Thank you.
And there's a Zoom if you'd like to join us. We can give you the Zoom link.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I just have to mention, I think Mary Ann has been all over focusing on grant opportunities. And I think, we don't thank her enough. And I think that the work you're doing there is just so important to us. Yeah.
The other thing, Keith, and We're going to be done quickly, but the other thing is, this group has done a lot of outreach, and, DEM came to a meeting and was here, or URI, or Caitlin Chafee. I mean, there's been a whole lot of networking, and I was at a meeting the other day where it was very clear Judy's relationships. That speaks a lot for Block Island. Sure. I make a motion.
Second, motion to adjourn. Second,
Second.
all in favor indicate by saying aye. We're adjourned.